Welcome to our guide to hiking up Mount Yari, or Yarigatake, within Japan's Chubu Sangaku National Park. The park is also referred to as the Northern Japanese Alps and stretches across several prefectures with plenty of hiking trails. Mount Yari is named after the Japanese word for spear, as the peak resembles one. The mountain is 3,180 meters tall and the fifth tallest mountain in Japan. There are multiple routes to the top of Mount Yari. One popular route is a loop from Kamikochi to Mount Yari and then to Mount Hotaka. It's often called the Kamikochi-Yari-Hotaka circuit. We were interested in it, but there is a particularly dangerous section between Mount Yari and Mount Hotaka called the Daikiretto. It's extremely steep with exposed ascents and descents and isn't for the faint of heart. Instead, we decided on a one-way route that started in Kamikochi and ended in Shinhotaka Onsen. Our trip would be 3 days and 2 nights, and we planned to stay in mountain huts along the trail. From Kamikochi, we headed north past Myojin Pond, crossed the Asusa River, and then headed to Yarisawa Lodge to stay the night. The second day, we left the lodge and summited Mount Yari and stayed the night there at Yarigatake Sanso. The final day, we descended Mount Yari to Shinhotaka Onsen. The entire route is about 32.6 kilometers, or 20.3 miles. Each day of the journey would be strenuous, especially the second and third days. Mountain huts throughout Chubu Sangaku National Park provide meals and overnight accommodations. Sleep arrangements are typically dormitory style with long bunk beds. There are also private rooms available. This also meant we wouldn't need to bring a tent, sleep system, or cooking gear. There are also campgrounds along the route if you choose to use them. Mountain huts require reservations that can usually be made online. There are plenty of other lodges than the ones we picked, so you can really customize a trip however you choose. English maps of the area are somewhat difficult to find, so we bought Japanese maps and made it work. We had both paper and electronic maps. For more info on the maps, check out our website. To help other hikers, we also created a map for Mount Yari in English and Japanese. We visited the park in early July, which was at the end of the rainy season. Unfortunately, it was raining pretty heavily prior to our trip, and we almost canceled it entirely. The benefit of doing it that time of year, though, was that there were less people. In the end, we had to hike part of day 1 in the rain. We were very glad to have small umbrellas, rain jackets, and rain pants. From Kamikochi, we headed east along the Asusa River. You can go either north or south of the river. We chose to go north so that we could visit Myojin Pond and Hotaka Okumiya Shrine. This added about 15 minutes to our hiking time, but it was worth it.
This is a trail to a pond on the way to Yarisawa.
There were plenty of boardwalks, roaring streams, and views of the river on the way. Part of Hotaka Okumiya Shrine is free to access, and you can pay 500 yen per person to access Myojin Pond. We decided to pay the extra fee. The pond is very serene and picturesque. We were glad to see it. However, we aren't convinced it was worth the price.
Okay, drop my umbrella. They look pretty sexy. Woo.
After crossing Azusa River, we stopped at Myojinkan, a small lodge, for some food, which was solid. After that, the rain started tapering off, and before we knew it, the sun started peeking out. After crossing a stream that flows into the Azusa River, we entered the Tokusawa area, which includes multiple lodges and a campground. The trail followed the river much of the way into the Yoko area, where there's again another lodge and campground. Checking our map, we saw that we were about 1 hour and 40 minutes away from Yarisawa Lodge. It was 3:30 p.m., and dinner is served there at 5 p.m. I went into Yoko Sanso and asked the staff to call Yarisawa and let them know we'd be late. We wouldn't get the usual dinner. Instead, it would be dehydrated curry, but we were okay with that. The previously wide level path narrows, becomes rocky, and the trail starts to ascend significantly for the first time on our hike. As the trail took us closer to the river, we could see the beautiful cloudy blue water. The air around us cooled significantly, and we could see our breath. We reach Yarisawa Lodge and pay for 3 meals and accommodations. We chose to get a bento lunch to take with us on the trail the next day. Our sleeping arrangements are in a bunk. Thankfully, there's not too many people at the lodge, and we're relieved to see that we had the whole row to ourselves. We store our wet gear in a drying room, and then we get our dinner and go to sleep. Many hikers in Japan wake up before dawn, and breakfast would start at 5:30 a.m. The next day, we had a simple but delicious breakfast of fish, miso soup, rice, and veggies. We picked up our lunch bento, filled water bottles up, then headed out. It was a gorgeous day, and we promptly started ascending in elevation. We passed Baba Daira campground and started seeing some snow. The melting snow also caused cold, clear streams that flowed everywhere, sometimes along the trail itself. We have to take a moment to appreciate our bento from Yarisawa Lodge, which was the best bento that we had from any lodge in Japan. We reached the first of 4 snowfields. It was a bit scary, never having crossed them before. We just went slow and got across without any problem. We brought cheap crampons, but wish we had brought something a bit better. It's said that a Buddhist priest by the name of Banryu was the first to successfully climb Mount Yari in 1828. A cave along the path is famous for being one of his shelters. We started seeing boulders with numbers painted on them. This is the elevation gain required to reach the top in meters. It was a nice measure of our progress. In the rock scramble sections, some rocks had large X's and O's on them, indicating where to go, the O's, or avoid, the X's, since the terrain wasn't a defined path. Eventually, we spotted Yarigatake Sanso, just below the peak, where we would spend the night. We were exhausted when we checked in, but thrilled that we were finally there. We reserved our bunks and set our gear aside. Hikers can climb the peak of Mount Yarigatake, situated just next to the lodge. We knew we wouldn't have time the next day, so we decided to go ahead and do it. We had an hour or so before dinner, which turned out just to be enough time. The route to the peak of Yari is a vertical climb aided by ladders, chains, and scrambling. It was a lot of fun. The routes up and down the peak are mostly separate, so you won't run into people going the opposite direction.
Yep.
A small shrine sits at the summit. The peak was shrouded in a dense fog. It was hard to see out any distance, but we did get a few glimpses of the surrounding mountains. Once back down at the lodge, we sit down to dinner of hamburger steak, veggies, miso soup, and rice, with about 15 other guests. We enjoyed a simple and tasty breakfast of salmon, veggies, egg, miso soup, and rice. Today would be the longest day. We would hike 12.1 kilometers, or 7.6 miles, and descend over 2,000 meters, which is over 6,800 feet. Once outside, we gazed out over the horizon and saw Mount Fuji in the distance. Saying goodbye to the lodge, we headed through the adjacent campground. Its many sites are intricately laid out along and below the ridgeline, though only a few groups were using it. High winds could be an issue here.
This is our route down to Shinhotaka Onsen. Somewhere down there. Aikureto, which we are not gonna do.
The weather was sunny and beautiful, but we didn't see too many people. The trail is well defined, but steep with some loose, slippery rocks in some places. Trekking poles were a necessity. As we descended, we started seeing more lush green plant life. Fog rolled in, but thankfully it didn't rain or mist. We crossed a few streams, some of which swelled with rainwater, and were a bit tricky to cross. The area became more forested. Near an intersection, we passed a campground and arrived at Yaridara Hut. It was a convenient spot to rest and grab a simple meal of udon, along with our bento from Yarigatake Sanso.
I'll move. Sorry.
After a dry dam, we reach a fire road as we neared Shinhotaka Onsen. A few water features go under the road, and we passed several other dams. The terrain was easy at this point, so we made good time. Before we knew it, we arrived in Shinhotaka Onsen. We had made a reservation at a ryokan called Yari. We were able to call our ryokan, and they sent a shuttle to pick us up. The food was nothing special, but everything else about the onsen was amazing. Our tired muscles enjoyed soaking and relaxing in the hot water. The following day, we took a bus from the Shinhotaka ropeway to our next destination. Mount Yari was the highlight of our trip in Japan, with its stunning views, mountain huts, and solitude. Being surrounded by breathtaking mountains in Japan is unlike any experience we've had. The route we planned worked well for us. The only issue was the descent on the last day. I wouldn't recommend descending over 2,000 meters in a day, but at the same time, I'm glad we didn't take an extra day to hike down. Lastly, ending at Shinhotaka allowed us to relax in an onsen after the hike, which was much appreciated. If you visit, please treat the area with respect and follow Leave No Trace. Check out the link to our website in the description box. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.